Erica.
I know. I'm so proud of you.
Hi, LEC community. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Just catching up with my favorite professor ever, Dr. Erica Hernandez-Scott. I'm so excited to have her on with us today. Erica, how are you doing?
I am doing very well. It's a beautiful day here in Washington State on the West Coast. It's only 2 p.m. here. So,
Nice.
yes.
You're 2 hours ahead, like behind us. So make
Yes.
make the most of those 2 hours for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I will do
Well,
what I can.
I haven't addressed you since, like, in public since you've become a doctor. So is Erica still okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Congratulations on recently. What has it been? 2 years now?
It's been 2 years, May of 2017.
Nice. Congratulations on that. On getting your PhD, right?
Yes.
That's awesome. We're going to talk all about that because our community, I'm sure, would love to hear about it. But to start us off,
Hmm.
I will tell our community that Erica was a professor of mine at UMKC with the Institute for Urban Education. Um, my cohort will agree that so much of our philosophy and of our teaching comes from Erica's teachings from her class. Um, I know Jackie in particular, she and I are always like, okay, what would Erica do? Like, instead of what would Jesus do, it'd be like, what would Erica do? So just, seriously, Erica, shout out to you, revolutionary, like beyond no other. And our community is getting ready to learn today.
All right.
So tell us about yourself, um, maybe a little bit of your background and what you do now.
I first and foremost am a teacher, born and raised in Kansas City. I'm a graduate of the Kansas City Public Schools, so I'm a public school kid. Went to an urban school. I got an elementary education degree at Rockhurst University and taught in the Hickman Middle School District for 7 years. I have a master's degree in curriculum and instruction, and the emphasis is urban and multicultural education. And that grew out of just a need to like want to be better as a classroom teacher. So um, I think some people kind of rise up because they're really talented, and I wanted to just be better. I didn't feel like I was doing things well enough. So I went back to school to get better. And in the process of getting that degree, I started stretching myself more, leading more, started thinking about how I wanted to not just improve classrooms for me, but for other teachers. And so then eventually I left the classroom, became an instructional coach for a year. And then in the summer of 2008, which is 12 years ago now, I just before my, or yeah, just after my 30th birthday, I moved into being a clinical assistant professor in higher education. And while I was there, I met all these awesome young teachers who wanted to be teachers in urban schools and work with Black and Brown kids. And in that process, I again was like, I want to be better. So I eventually pursued a PhD in an interdisciplinary PhD in curriculum instruction and educational leadership and policy and foundations. And so my research was about Latina teachers and what do they need to be successful? What can they tell us from their stories? So instead of doing what all the literature said, which is to talk about what are all the things wrong with education that prevent Latinx teachers from becoming a part of the profession, I asked, why do they stay? How do they get their education? How do they get their careers? So we already know what gets in the way. I want to know what works. And so my study was looking at, can't remember now if it's 6 or 7 teachers, but what worked for them, and what can we use? How could we use that information to design programs for teachers of color, Latinx teachers, that would help them be well prepared for the classroom, that would make them want to stay, and that would keep them from burning out. So yeah, right now, I taught there at the University of Missouri Kansas City for eight 8 years. And then I moved across the country to Evergreen State College. I did that for 2 years. And then I came closer back to Kansas City to be closer to family. Worked at the University of Memphis for a year. And this now, I've been 7 months in a job back in Washington where I am the DEI, so Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, DEI Leadership and Learning Manager for the Washington State Professional Educator Standards Board. And so we're responsible for policy development and guidance slash regulation for educator preparation programs in the state of Washington.
Now, is that for the whole state or is that Washington State University?
That is for the entire state of Washington.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's like what? I don't even know how you would do that. Like,
you know what? Not quite sure how I've done it. I mean, I guess the piece of advice I have for people is just because you never imagined it or never seen anyone else do it doesn't mean that you can't, give it a shot. And so a lot of my um, advancing in my career has just been a willingness to fail and learn from that. I've never had a job I knew how to do before I got it. I've always just said, I think I could try to do that, or I'll give it a shot. And um, I'm sure people who've known me at the beginning of some jobs recognize all the ways I didn't know how to do them in the beginning, but I'm a quick study. So
That's awesome. That's amazing. I think you've said that to me several times about like, yeah, we just, jump into it. And then if it's not for you, like that'll become clear and or it could really be for you, and then that's great that you jumped into it. We'll
mhm.
have some oh, that's just Edgar on the comments. We'll have some live comments that come up every once in a while, so I'll pause for those. Okay, there we go. Hi, Brian. He's saying hello. I didn't see, and
Oh,
Osceola,
that's my best
yes,
friend, Osceola Collins. Shout out, Lincoln
yes.
Prep Middle School.
Thank you so much for
Oh,
being with us.
there's my Aunt Irma, my Grandma Maya. I love you all.
Oh, I love it. Oh, all the love for Erica. Keep showing us love on the comments. Keep showing Erica love on the comments because she really is like deserving of all the love. I have so much to ask. I have so much to share. Um, First of all, tell me about. I don't even know where to start. First of all, tell me about. Let's start with you deciding to become an educator.
hmm
What did that look like? Was it in high school? Was it in college? Did you change your major? What led you to be an educator?
I am first and foremost a nerd. Like, I think pocket protectors are a great idea. Whoever invented them, like, that's a great idea. You keep the ink out of your pocket. I have always been just like curious. So,
By the
I
way,
would.
I have no idea what that looks like. I don't know what a pocket protector looks like.
It is a plastic little sleeve that you put in your front pocket, and then you put your pens in the plastic sleeve so that if your pens leak, it keeps the ink out of your shirt.
Got it. I've
It's
never seen one of them.
it's a great idea. So
I
I've
love
always
it.
been a nerd. And by nerd I mean someone who's just like curious and loves to learn.
Uh-huh.
So there was like no internet when I was a kid. So if I wanted to know something, like my parents took me to the library and I checked out books and I read the encyclopedia, some volumes were bought at the grocery store at Price Chopper by my mom. So
Uh-huh.
um, I was always just like curious and asking a lot of questions and annoying to adults. And like when the world changed and you could had access to information and could like just consume it rapidly. I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to do something that like keeps me curious and interested. And wouldn't it be fun if I could help other people like feel that joy of like, oh, I had no idea why we have the hiccups. It makes sense now, you know. Like I wanted that, and I wanted to do that in elementary classrooms because I really did like all subject matter, and I was like, if I get to hang out with kids all day and be like, what would you know? My siblings would joke and say, do you know all of your sentences begin with did you know that? And that was like, if I became a teacher, then no one was gonna just talk trash about me starting everything with did you know that, because it's kind of welcome
Yeah.
as a part of school.
Uh-huh. So when did you realize that? Was that when you were little, or did you get a
I
little older?
I was always interested in learning as a kid, but I didn't decide on it as a career until high school. When I
Okay.
was in high school, so I went to Lincoln and we had the IB and AP classes, and so I had a opportunity to take IB courses. I had a couple years of calculus before I finished high school, and even then, I still had like some free periods, and so I like worked in the library and did a study hall with other people to see if they needed help with their work, and I just kind of fell into it there. And I was like the Kansas City Public Schools, I was awarded a scholarship through the district that the teachers in the district contributed a portion of their salaries to the scholarship program. So I had one of their scholarships that helped pay for my education and help me become a teacher.
That's awesome. I don't think that's a thing now, right? No. But that's
Probably
amazing.
not. And they, at the time, I also had one of the Missouri Departments of Education, their minority teacher education scholarships. So that was another amount of money um, that helped pay for my education. So I
Yeah.
felt like there were people out in the world that were happy to like support this career path.
Yeah. Where did you start off in college? Where was your undergrad from?
Rockhurst.
Oh, that's right. You said that. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so you stayed close.
Yep.
Is is Was there a reason for you to go to Rockhurst? Did it stick out somehow?
Well, no, there really wasn't. So this is not the way to choose a college, but what had happened was, I was in the counseling center, and the counselor said, Erica, I have a not a tuition, application waiver for Rockhurst, and UMKC charged an application fee. And that to me at the time was like seemed such like such an insurmountable thing. So I was like, well, I'll apply to this school, and I got in, and that was that. Like I didn't do a lot of research. I should have done like all this research. I just knew I was going to go to school. There
That's
was an
awesome.
application waiver. I would have made different choices if I had you'd think I was smart, but clearly I wasn't. That's not a good way to decide on your school, but that's what happened. Was like it was a free application. I applied, I got in, they gave me a scholarship, and that was that.
And that was that. I love it. That's perfect because I feel like the college acceptance thing has like really blown up. Like
Yeah,
I don't know if it was a thing back in the day, but I know when I was choosing a college, everyone was like, oh, "What college is everyone choosing?" You know, and it's like I went to UMKC because it's close home. You know.
right. Like it's down the street. I learned how
Yeah,
to drive like 3 weeks before I had to go off to college. Like it was just
I love it.
I just didn't know. And that like these days you hear all these reports of this student has $500,000 in scholarships and they've got into 75 schools. I'm like, who wants to do 75 applications?
Applications,
Pick the few that you're going to do. You can't take that $500,000 to one school. That's spread out over different schools.
right?
Choose the right place, invest your time and energy. Stop trying to show off.
And and I wonder about the application fees. Like you said, I mean, you said like that was a bad way to choose it, but really, it's like paying 75 application fees. I'm sure.
I hope there were some waivers involved for
waiver.
those students. I hope they
There you
didn't
go.
have to do that.
That's where those waivers come in, right?
Yeah.
So tell me about some of the highlights of your journey. So from choosing Rockhurst to ending up in the classroom, what are some highlights you remember?
I so you might find this hard to believe, but I'm like very much an introvert. So it was challenging in the beginning to like be in front of students. And then it doesn't take long before you realize that they're just like little people that don't want to be bored. And so when, so then it was like, well, let's see how engaging we can make this so that they will get on board and do what we're doing. And so and I taught fourth grade, and I taught fourth grade for 6 years, and they were just so funny and so smart. And you would think, that they're very young and they don't know anything, and they know so much, and they taught me so much. So that for me has been like very humbling to realize, that children know so much. Their parents know their children, but yet they also don't know that they like are like out in the world and asserting themselves and telling jokes. And so I just felt like I got to have a little window into like a year of somebody's life. It's like live reality TV. I was there, right? That's what it's like being a teacher.
It
um
really is. That's such a good description of
yeah,
what.
like you're in the middle of a reality TV show, um where there's tears and arguments and all of the things that make good
Mm-hmm.
reality TV. And one thing that I think, I read this article when I was in undergrad about a teacher who had met with her students 20 years after she taught her first class. And so that was one thing that my very first year of teaching, at the end of the first year, I gave each student a little paper invitation. It was like, in 20 years we'll meet. And this
Oh.
summer, COVID summer, dumpster fire 2020, we was not able to go home, but I have been able to make contact with the vast majority of those students from 20 years
What?
ago. We're in a little
Oh.
Facebook group, and I've had an opportunity to apologize for all the things I didn't know, like, and they, some of them, they assured me, oh no, your class was my favorite class. And I'm like, oh, I know there were things I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so I think I am most proud of like having enough foresight to think, in 20 years I'm going to have to face these young people again. They're adults. I was 22 at the time. uh Probably shouldn't have been left in charge of other people's children.
Yeah.
I don't think I did any significant damage, since we're still connected. But uh yeah, I'd say I've always had a long view of what I'm going to do, and so I kind of try to operate without regret as much as possible. And then
That's
when I mess
awesome.
up, I apologize, because I do.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna pull up some comments. I know Katina has joined us in the conversation. What's up, Katina? Evening, ladies. Thank you, Katina. Thank you. El Centro is watching. Thank you so much. Um, oh my God, too funny. You made me feel old not knowing what a pocket protector is.
Everybody's going to look this up after it's over. Order one on Amazon.
Osceola, I love it. Showing you love. I can attest that. I became friends with Eric in ninth grade. In ninth grade, she knew she wanted to teach. Oh,
Oh, I didn't
I
know
love
that.
that. I love that. So your first year of teaching, I remember when you taught us. You would mention a lot of these things. Like, I was not the greatest teacher. Looking back on it now, like, I can think of the mistakes I made. I can think of, but it's so cool for it to come full circle 20 years later, and you be able to reach out to your first year teaching. I actually just realized also how our start to teaching kind of aligns. I was 22 as well,
Mm-hmm.
when I started teaching, and I also should not have been in charge of other people's kids. but I think starting out that young also like leaves. I don't know. It's like it's its own experience. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Well, and as somebody that saw you while you were learning to become a teacher, I can tell you that in your junior year, you were better than I was in my first year. So
Mm.
everybody, as a novice, right? Everyone feels insecure. You don't have any wisdom yet. You don't have any like, is this how this is supposed to work? So you don't have any background knowledge to draw from. But I know, just based on the way your program was designed, that the people who left, um performing least well were still better off than I was my first year when I was out. So, you know change is slow, and you may not see how big of a difference that made, but I saw you while you were learning to teach, and I know
Oh.
for a fact that you were better than me.
So what do you think that speaks to your teacher education program?
Yes, yes. And so here's the thing that I have learned as a part of my study of teacher education. Because in order to be a teacher educator, you have to have at least a master's degree. Um, and I was fortunate when I was at UMKC, and that people saw what I had to offer and wanted me to bring those things, right? Not every place that you work at will appreciate the ways that you're different. So I had an opportunity that maybe wasn't there for other people who had uh, better credentials. But the vast majority of people doing research in teacher education are white teacher educators. And because the vast majority of people who go into teaching are white females, the research that comes out of teacher education is research by white researchers on white students. And so my undergraduate preparation reflected that
Mm.
we talked about issues of equity. I had an opportunity to be placed in an urban school where diverse students and teachers were, but I had to ask for that. And because I
Mm.
asked for it, I got it. But that wasn't an experience that everyone else in the program shared. And
Mm, okay.
so I can remember, not just my program, but peers my age. Now, I went to the Kansas City Public Schools. I went to Lincoln. Many of my peers at school, black and brown high school students. I didn't know that I really did not experience racism until I went to college. Then I realized,
Mm.
oh, racism is not like just something that people did in the South a long time ago. Kids my own
Mm.
age from communities I know are saying, why do we have to take a diversity class?
Mhm.
And so like part of that experience is like letting teachers of color, like, hey, you're going to hear pushback. You're going to hear people who do not value what it is that you are aspiring to do, and you have to decide how much energy to devote to that.
Mhm. I I will tell you that you told us some version of that, what you just said, like you're going to receive pushback from, I mean, unfortunately, really what's best for black and brown students, because the system wasn't established for black and brown students, right? And I
Hmm.
remember it stuck with me even to this day. You said, you're gonna get pushback on doing what's right, the thing that you know is the right thing to do. So you better be ready to provide the data that proves that that's what's best for kids.
Right.
And I think it's a recurring theme that happens with people of color, really in general, but speaking for teachers of color, is having to defend ourselves,
Hmm.
having to consistently pull out the data and the numbers that show when a lot of, or a lot of this stuff can come from anecdotal and experience, right?
Hmm.
Evidence of experience. When you have students telling you this class doesn't work for me,
Hmm.
or this way of learning doesn't work for me, there might not be data right then and there for me to pull and say, this is why this isn't working for XYZ student. Why is it not valued just enough to say this student or this group of students isn't learning because of XYZ, right? But I
Mm-hmm.
remember that sticking out to me. Like, I just better be ready with this data and
Mm-hmm.
with this reasoning for doing what's best for my kids.
Right. And you also will have like multiple audiences. So if I make a suggestion for something, first of all, as a woman of color, as a scholar of color, now an administrator, like I currently work in a place where my opinions are valued, where I can make a suggestion and people will be like, tell us more about that. But that's not always the case. The
Mm-hmm.
In broader society, regardless of how much education and experience I have, the general way I'm received is to presume that I'm not competent.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to prepare myself with all the different ways that I need to back up what I'm suggesting. So if people are like, is this a good practice? For example, class meetings, building community among students. They're like, why should you do that? Do you have 15, 20 minutes of instructional time to waste? Would you like psychological research? Would you like research on organizational change? What kind of research would you like is going to support this? I've got like a deck of cards. Let's talk.
Right.
Literacy research, math research, human behavior, cultural studies, um,
Mm-hmm.
my grandma's wisdom. What is it that you need that's going to support this? Or economics. So people are like,
Mm-hmm.
why should we invest in this? Which generation right now is paying into the social security that we will have
Mm-hmm.
when we get older?
Mm-hmm.
So are we investing in their future or our future if we ensure that every child has a high quality education? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like criminal statistics? What happens in communities where children get good education? There's less crime. Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm always like uh ready to do battle with whatever kind of uh backup I need. So you have to be well versed in many areas.
Now, and you agree with me that that's directly correlated with being an educator of color, a woman of color.
Yes. Yeah, it is girl, don't cry. That is
It's so much.
it
It's
is.
so much.
That's how racism works, right? That you have to work, you have to be, you have to have all these credentials and maybe somebody will listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I still aspire to have the credential because I need to be in the room at the table as much as I can be if I want to work on behalf of children and families.
Mm. Yeah, that's powerful. That's powerful, and it's I guess I don't get emotional, but it is frustrating to really think about how immense like the responsibility really is, right? Like not only do I have to have the credentials and be able to do my job well, I have to do it tenfold, in order to even be listened to and considered.
But it also depends on like where, if you have circles where you don't, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there are people in places where I am respected and that offsets the places where I'm not, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't expect, because of the way the world is, I don't expect everyone to treat me with respect.
Mm-hmm.
But I do expect myself to be respectable in the different places. And what that looks like depends on what's happening. And when it gets too hard for me to like be cordial, if I'm
Mm-hmm.
disgruntled and angry, then it's time for me to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the other thing like I wasn't raised to be a quitter. I thought I was going to be in the same classroom for 30 years, and there's nothing wrong with starting a career and starting employment in a particular district or a particular school, and then deciding the amount of pushback or bureaucracy I'm experiencing has so undermined my ability to do my work that I'm going to do this work somewhere else so that the community can receive the full impact of what I have to
Mm-hmm.
offer.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever feel like you had succumbed? Like, I guess now I'm just like thinking about my experience, you know? I feel like you're, or I was, you get to a place where you're so stifled, and like the
Mm-hmm.
bureaucracy really stifles you, you know? Um, did you ever feel like you had succumbed to it, or almost like had like started to fall into those cycles of oppression and all of that?
Uh, I don't think I ever thought I sold out, if that's what you're asking. um, I think uh I think I got to the point at
Yeah,
different
kind of.
points, if it at different points, and depending on what's happening in the world, right? Like what's happening right now,
Mm-hmm.
what's happening, like when Ferguson happened and all those things like that. Like it depends on what's happening in the moment. So I've always been, like you said, more revolutionary, a more radical than the average person, but I never did that because that's what I wanted to be known for. I
Mm-hmm.
always just felt like, and this, I get this from my dad, like, we just need to tell the truth. Like, let's tell the truth about what's actually happening here. And when it got to the point where I was so distracted or so angry that I was no longer producing work that was the quality that I expect for myself, then I knew it was time for me to do something else. So I
Mm-hmm.
was never worried about going along to get along, because I never fit anyway. But I did worry about being so far out there that I no longer had like allies or co-conspirators and things like that. But
Yeah.
some of that is also age, right? As I've gotten older, one thing I did get from my undergraduate education um, was this phrase, and I learned it my freshman year, and it was, what was it now? Okay, it was reason tempered by wisdom equals justice. And so it's this idea that, like, of course this makes sense, right? So people say, for example, immigrants are not here legally, so we can reason they shouldn't be here. But wisdom will tell you that laws are not made for certain people. Wisdom will tell you laws have changed all the time, so maybe this one doesn't work anymore. And so you
Mm-hmm.
have to bring in like this knowledge, kind of the book knowledge, right? And the wisdom of your ancestors and elders and the way the world really works. They have to come together if we want there to be justice. And so as you get older, it becomes easier for you to have your own wisdom and easier for you to hear the wisdom of others, which is why it's like you see, like, the younger people are, the more kind of radical they are, and then they get older and they are vocal but in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of what you're experiencing, I think, is a shift from and starting to have enough experience to bring wisdom into your own reasoning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whereas, like at the beginning, um, it was like I need to follow. You know, like I need to learn. I need to listen. Would like listen in a way that I think sometimes we get lost in.
Hmm.
Like everything we hear is right, right? When that's not the truth. Um, that's deep. We could go. I could go on and on about
Well,
that.
and that's the challenge of being a new teacher, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
you could have what you think is a really amazing preparation experience. And if you get hired in the wrong place and you become socialized in that environment, the school environment can undo everything that you've learned just
Mm-hmm.
because you're immersed in it all day, every day. So you have to be really aware of yourself and your belief system so that when everything around you is saying do this, you can resist for yourself staying true to your beliefs.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love that. That's exactly. You're speaking to the choir right now, preaching to the choir because I need that. Andrea has joined us. Hey, Andrea. I think she has a comment.
Yeah, I see.
Um,
It says that's good.
that's
Something's
good.
good.
I'm pretty sure it was the. What did you say? What was the word? What was the phrase?
Which one?
The
Oh,
one that you learned in college.
oh gosh. Reason tempered by wisdom equals justice.
I gotta remember that too, because that's good. I think you have a lot of those little tidbits. Because now I'll be like, my professor Erica, she told me that da 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 da, and I'll like, you must be just like one of those people that like, I don't know those phrases. You have those phrases. I like it.
Yeah, that's how I
Oh,
remember things.
okay. Maybe that's how because I literally will be like, my professor in college said, and then I'll say what you
Mhm.
love
I
it.
try to boil things down to their simplest form. So, yes, right now I work at the state board and I'm an administrator and we do policy work. But I have to ask myself every day, is what I'm doing, is this working on the behalf of children and families? Am I doing something that's going to support educators? And if I can't answer that the way that I think it should be answered on a regular basis, then I need to change what I do.
Yeah, I love that. So was there a point in hey, in either your teaching that maybe a struggle or a learning moment that drove you toward doing more of this equity work and diversity and equity and inclusion?
Well, so I was telling my dad not that long ago that I feel really fortunate that over the course of my childhood we lived in different communities. So we lived in an African American community like South Kansas City between Troost and Paseo when I was like up to like age 6, and then we lived on the west side through middle school, and then we lived like near Brookside like for high school. So I knew very, very early in life what it was like to like be immersed in different communities. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and I knew that's what the kind of thing I wanted to teach in. Like I
Mm-hmm.
had, and at the time it was Switzer. I think it's like apartments now or something off of 18th and Madison. Um, there, like, I had a good teacher. She was the most blonde, blue eyed white woman I had ever seen. And she could teach like nobody's business. I mean, centers, taking us to businesses in the community. We had to do a class play. Ours was the Aztec creation story. Like she understood who we
Okay.
were culturally. Uh, we had opportunities to move and talk, to engage, to create, to read, to write. Like it was amazing. And I knew because I had experienced that it was possible, right? That it was
Mm-hmm.
possible to have a room full of black, brown, white, Spanish speaking kids in a dilapidated school building, right? It was just falling apart to still have a high quality learning experience. And
I love
so
that.
I knew it was possible. And and even though it was hard for me and there were things that I was failing at, I knew it was possible. So it was like, what else do I need to do to make it happen like she made it happen?
Mm-hmm. Do you remember her name?
Her name was Lisa Gibbons. I need the world to help me find her. She's probably in her 70s right now. Yeah, I have no idea where she is, but I would love to find her.
Oh, All right, LEC community, you heard it. That's why I wanted to know her name. I was like, maybe she's out there somewhere.
Yeah,
Lisa
Lisa
Gibbons.
Gibbons. She taught fourth grade, gifted and talented at Switzer Elementary School.
I love it. I love it. Hopefully we find her. That's so
Yeah,
cool.
I would love to
Um,
find her.
you mentioned that you were in IB classes in high school, and then you just mentioned gifted and
Talented.
talented. Got it.
I
What
was
classroom
neither
is that?
gifted or
Yeah, like and or.
talented.
What
You
led
know,
you there? Like, did your parents like lead that path, or did your teachers?
I think I think honestly, I don't know that I am that smart. I think I just have a good memory, right? So I responded well as a young student to like reading and was a voracious reader. And I
I'm gonna laugh if someone like tag Lisa Gibbons already.
oh yeah, that would be awesome. I'm not gonna start crying right here. Voracious reader, like could remember math facts and things like that. So I was good at the things that are valued in school, which
Mm,
meant I had additional opportunities. So I honestly can't say that I was gifted as much as I did what people valued and then they gave me more opportunities. So when I worked at the high school, we talked about uh Tammy Combs, Dr. Tammy Combs. I worked
mm-hmm,
for her as a principal. But she was my principal, and she said we're really trying to make gifted education for all students. Like, how do we provide gifted education for all students?
yeah.
And I remember thinking after that, like, I don't think I was really gifted. Like, maybe I just had opportunities that other people didn't get to have, and that were further supported by like my parents taking us to the library, went to the library all the time. We had the newspaper they read all the time. They talked about what was happening on the news. So, for anybody that's like, oh, you should feel badly, your parents didn't go to college. My parents didn't go to college, but they are smart. I still
Mm-hmm,
call up my dad and I'm like, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? And
mm-hmm,
so there's this narrative that somehow your background is something to overcome is a lie.
mm-hmm.
Your background, who you are, where you come from, is going to get you where you want to go. It won't be in spite of it.
Mm. I love it. I love that. And that aligns really well with my upbringing as well. You know, my mom is disabled and hard of hearing and doesn't know English and doesn't read or write in Spanish and has a speech impediment in Spanish. So for a lot of my life, it felt like, she couldn't teach me, right? And then I'm grown up now and I'm like, she's the smartest person I know, and
Mm-hmm.
like undocumented, three kids, like all these barriers, and then it's like, yet you're like the smartest person I know, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and that lends to our lives as teachers too, because you see the barriers that your parents had and that my parents had, and then you're like, yeah, come on, let's do this,
Mm-hmm.
not that everyone's gonna have that path or that, you know what I mean. Everyone has their barriers, but
No, but you build resilience from struggle, right? And
mm-hmm,
a lot of teaching is about failing, trying again, failing, figure out what went wrong, trying again. And so, like, I felt like I was inherently a problem solver and resourceful, which helped me as a teacher, right? Like,
mm-hmm,
my dad doesn't like to pay people to do things that he can do himself.
yeah,
So that kind of mentality I took into the classroom. Like, what can I do
mm-hmm,
here? How can I figure this out? And so when you do that, right? and I'm having conferences and people are like, well, some people don't care about their kids, that's why they're not here. Well, this parent is not here because she works 3 jobs. So
mm-hmm,
I'm going to be resourceful and see, can I meet her after school on a Saturday at McDonald's? Why? Because I'm a problem solver, and that's what problem solvers do.
mm-hmm,
So in some ways, I was really set up to not be boxed in by the rules, because that's not who my parents are. Like, they
I
figure
love that.
things out.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That's like so powerful. Look, Lori joined our conversation and said that she is going to put the feelers out there. She's going to
Find
try
Lisa
to find
Gibbons.
Miss Gibbons. I'm so
Yes,
glad you remember her name.
it was a oh man, she changed my life.
I love that.
Because that
I
was
love it.
before that class. I felt like I was embarrassed to be smart. That other people, I wasn't supposed to stand. You're not supposed to stand out too much.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I really like school. So then you're standing out for the wrong reasons, for reasons that people will pick on you for. And
Mm-hmm.
in our classroom, like everyone was treated like they were bright.
That's so cool. And I mean the whole background about your parents too, and taking that resilience and everything they taught you into the classroom as a teacher as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now what? I'm going to bring up one more comment before I ask you the next thing. Jessica Collins, thanks for joining us. I
That's my
love our.
cousin.
Yay!
I just got all these family representatives.
Yeah, I'm like, that's what's up. I'm happy that your family is
Yeah.
joining us. She said, not
Yes.
being boxed in by the rules and figure it out. I feel like that's something we can all do in any career field. I love that. That's absolutely
Mm-hmm.
true. Um, so, your dissertation,
Mm-hmm.
I participated in it, and you talked at the beginning of our conversation about how you focused on what was going well for
Mm-hmm.
Latina teachers. Tell me a little bit about what you found.
I found that um, of the people that I studied, that much of who they were and how they were socialized in their upbringing is what helped them be successful. So
This was a perfect
connections,
bridge then to
yeah,
what you just said about your
yeah.
family.
So they built relationships. They within support systems, they built smaller support systems. So um in many ways they built smaller family units
Mm,
within the broader structure of the program. And so for them, it was really a lot of it was relationship driven. Like, who are the people that I am connecting with that I can talk to when I need help? That's not school related. Who are the people that I connect with when I want to work when it is school related? Who are the people that are going to tell me the inside things about getting a job, not just like how to get ahead and climb a career ladder on the backs of other people, but like, this is what's happening out in the world and this is how you see it. So what it comes down to is not that people invest. I mean, scholarship dollars helped, no lie there.
mm-hmm,
But if we're going to invest in something, we need to invest in the right relationship structures and the right kind of people and mentoring, that can help you tap into the strengths that you bring.
mm-hmm. I You're speaking my life right now. That's
Mm-hmm.
literally, I mean, you saw us in college, and I'm sure it's not unique to my cohort or to me or to Jackie, the like sub families that you create in order to be like, I can't go home and ask these questions, right? Or I can't go into my neighborhood and ask these questions. Like, what are you doing for this essay and that essay? Or in your classroom, what does this look like? That's great. Now, Edgar and I and the LEC have been also having the conversation about how we are doing some work with helping educators, particularly Latinx educators, navigate their school systems and their jobs. What that happens all the time, unfortunately, at least.
That's okay.
But what kind of stood out as struggles that Latinx teachers face?
Some teaching in general, but like social isolation. So there's a very good chance that you might be the only teacher of color in your building. Um, and even if you aren't, that doesn't mean that you're going to see eye to eye with everyone else. For years, I was the only uh, certified classroom teacher in my building, and the only other people of color were like the speech pathologist and the custodian and maybe some of the people that worked in the cafeteria. So so there was this element of social isolation because I wasn't gonna like go to the lake with the people who like whose husbands had you know these certain kinds of jobs and who are attorneys. Like we're not going to be friends, we're not going to hang out because our lives are so very different. We're going to be friendly, like we'll be friendly, we'll have um friendly collegial relationships, but we weren't going to like hang out on the weekend because we don't like the same shows on Netflix. Like we're just different. So that's a challenge. Figuring out when you hear things that are like rooted in racism and oppression, like knowing what to address, when to address it. So if you feel the need to address everything, you'll be exhausted. If you don't address things that are really important for you, you'll be like torn up because you let something go that you shouldn't have. So knowing how to navigate kind of cultural and racial conflict when you're isolated in a space can be challenging. So having a network of people is really important. um, and then also not getting developed yourself. So one of the things that how often happens to teachers of color, because we are able to have productive relationships with children, and often the children that other teachers find challenging, that you might find that your classroom gets stacked with children who have more behavioral needs, and as a result of that, you spend a lot of your time managing behavior and doing a good job at it, but not necessarily learning how to develop yourself as a literacy teacher, as a mathematics teacher. So while other people are building content expertise and are able to move into other roles, you're kind of stuck being the person who is invested all their time in managing behaviors, and those students who you might have really productive relationships with go off to somebody the next year and doesn't treat them well. So in terms of like thinking about developing yourself, you have to be careful that in your desire to do good things for everyone, that you don't neglect yourself.
Yeah. Speaking, you're like literally taking me to church right now.
This
Because
is this is reality for this is reality for teachers of color.
uh,
And then the flip side is also not presenting yourself as a magical person who has all the answers for people of color. Here's the thing that the people don't often talk about. And maybe here's the thing I don't hear people often talk about. Maybe this might be different for other folks, but people of color, teachers of color, are just as capable of perpetuating racist systems as white folks. White folks may be the people who have established them and are maintaining them, but we also perpetuate these ideas. If you're making comments about, well, this person lives here, or they don't have both parents, or they lack this or lack that, like those deficit views can be just as easily perpetuated by teachers of color as white teachers. So sometimes because we are people of color, we don't get the investment and dismantling our own experiences with racism and oppression, and we find out maybe too late the ways in which we've contributed to that.
mm-hmm. Yep. Lori is commenting. She said, yes, 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 with the claps. I'm telling you, you're taking us to church right now. I mean, I think Lori is a fellow Latina educator, and it's just a lot of the hardships that we face, that unfortunately, when we look at the data, Latinos are the fastest growing teachers or the fastest growing demographic of teachers in education, but are also the quickest to leave with an average of 3 years versus the national average of 5 years for
Mm-hmm.
teachers. So it's just unfortunately, what we face in education and in the classroom. Fortunately for the system, we have Dr. Erica Hernandez-Scott, in the building, in like doing the work. I'm really grateful for that, Erica, for real, because you changed, just like Miss Gibbons changed your life, you changed my life.
Oh.
Like for real, I mean, to be able to look past, like you said, you know, I think it's ingrained in us that our backgrounds and the way we grew up and low income and first generation, like all these things are like, yeah, that's why, you know, things are so hard for me. And then you walk into Erica's classroom, it's like, no, Susana, like you have these tools and here they are. And so like, let's scaffold them, let's mold them, let's make them better. So no, for real, you changed my life. And I can attest to that, and I'm sure my cohort and everyone who you've taught and touched will say similar things. Um, Before, and I'm really sad this is wrapping up because I can I just like pay you to talk to me for like an hour a week, like just I don't know, tell me things, just motivate me.
It's funny. I have office hours at work on Fridays, and like people at work, because one of the things that I do is I do this kind of diversity equity work across the agency, and so I have office hours on Fridays where people just sometimes they just want to jump in and talk, and I've still been thinking about this thing we read. And so whether it be like with me face to face or something, like that is the thing that makes a difference for people, that in the process of providing supports for other people, don't forget to make them for yourself. That you have to have people that you can talk to and not have to explain yourself, that that know, you know, like you just need a place to be you, and to be unapologetically you.
Mm-hmm.
And whether you make it or find it, you should have it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to just chat.
Lori commented again and said, I want to join the conversation and I will pay too. Seriously, this is great. Erica, you're great. So for the LEC community, please know that Erica is out doing the work. And that's exciting to think about, because I think about like the way my life has gone now. It's like scary to not be in the classroom and be in front of kids next year, but it's also like impacting all these people who are going to impact kids, and that's the work you've been doing for what, 10ish years now. So I appreciate you. Thank you for all the hard work that you do, and the real work, doing the real work. Any last thoughts, question, comments that you want to leave us with?
So you when you have strong family ties, you can do anything, right? So right now I'm like on the other side of the country, but I'm still connected. So don't think just because you grew up in a certain place or that you live in a certain place that you have to stay there. You should definitely, like, even if you're like, I'm from Kansas City, I'm going to stay in Kansas City, I'm never leaving my city. You should still seek learning opportunities outside of where you're from, because the world is a huge place, and you might find that there's somebody out there who's like one of your people, and you don't want to deny yourself the opportunity to just connect with somebody else. So I would encourage people, like, I know we have family ties, but that's why they're called ties, right? Like that you're tied whether you're in the same space or not. So just, dream it, dream big, and tell yourself, why not? If wealthy people can give, their children all of these experiences, there's absolutely no reason why we can't do the same.
Mm-hmm.
So
I
as
love
we're
it.
thinking about opening up schools in the fall, and you're trying to figure out whether to send your kids to school, ask yourself, what are wealthy people doing with their children? Because they have the money to not do harm to their own kids. So always look at those people who have power. What are they doing? And insist that you get the same for yours.
That is something that has been said behind the scenes, like to me several times this week. So to put it out there, yes, That's exactly right. We got a lot of people joining us here as we're wrapping up. We got Lori, Latina educator, supporting and feeding Latina educators. Yes. Chris Odom, what's up, Dr. Hernandez-Scott?
One of my high school friends.
Oh, I love it. Jesse Osceola, this was an amazing conversation. Jesse, I
Oh,
love you,
that's my
Irma.
dad.
Oh, I love it. Irma, we're so proud of you. I love it. Gina with a heart.
Yeah, those are my people.
Irene, we love you. Keep up the good work. Jessica, yes. And Kayla Brown with the, praising hands. I love it. Lots of love for you, Erica. You
Yes.
much well deserved. So well deserved. All the loves to Erica this afternoon. Thank you for spending time with us.
Oh, of course.
I miss
You
you. I wish that I could just have you in my pocket, like in my pocket protector.
know, I'm gonna send you one now, right? I'm gonna send you one.
Please do. Now I'm about to go to Google right now and see what they look like because I only
Yes.
have a mental visual.
You
All
should
right,
you should LEC should get some with their logo.
Oh, Erica. Edgar, you hear that? You heard that. All right, Erica. Thank you so much for joining us. Keep in touch, and
Yes.
yeah, I love you.
Love you
Bye.
too.
Thank you, Erica. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.